All right, so we are in Unit 3, talking about the fiscal policy and multiplier. And so we've got this far talking about what recessionary gaps are and inflationary gaps with the ADAS graph and model. And now it's time to figure out, okay, if we're in a recession, there's a problem, or if we're in an inflationary gap, there's a problem. So what do we need to do to fix it? And a lot of times the car analogy is a good way to think about it so you can keep all this stuff straight in your head. So in a car, you could drive 120 miles per hour, but it's not sustainable. At some point the car's gonna rattle, things are gonna fall out. It's not a speed you should be driving at all the time to keep the car going well. That is kind of like when we are in an inflationary gap. We have very low unemployment. The economy's running too fast. It's not good, it's not sustainable. Also in a car, you could drive 20 miles per hour, but that's too slow. You could easily be driving more quickly or faster, and that would be more efficient. And that's just like our economy. If we have really high unemployment, the economy is not producing the things that it should be, it's not working efficiently, that's a recessionary gap. And then the car at, let's say, 70 miles per hour is sustainable. And that's the speed you should be working at. That's the sweet spot. And in economics, that's when the economy is at full employment. That's what we call that sweet spot. Some cars have the capacity to drive faster than others. And that analogy just in life means that some countries can produce more than other countries, industrial countries versus third world countries. And also if the engine, let's say, like the technology in the economy, or the gas mileage, let's say the productivity, like how educated and how productive are your laborers, increase, then the car can drive at an even higher speed if we fix that technology. So this is how we use the car analogy to think about the economy. It's also good to note that the government often speeds up or slows down the economy by using fiscal or monetary policy to get us into this sweet spot of full employment. So there's one thing we need to talk about first before we get into fiscal policy, and that's what role consumers play in the economy. So consumption is another word for spending, and it is the most important part of the economy. If we go back to the 4 components of GDP, consumer spending, investment, government spending, and net exports, that consumer spending is the largest portion of our GDP. So it becomes the most important part of the economy. Consumers will spend a certain amount no matter what, regardless of their income. And we call this autonomous consumption. This is usually to pay for necessities, your housing, your food, that kind of thing. So that number is set. However, there is extra money usually that consumers will spend that is called disposable income. Here we go. Consumer spending is made up of autonomous spending and disposable income, and that's the extra money that we have beyond the necessities, beyond taxes, beyond housing, beyond food. So if incomes are less than autonomous spending, then there is a dis-saving or a negative savings, meaning people aren't going to save nor are they going to spend because they're making less than what they need to live or to pay their normal bills. But if incomes are higher than that autonomous spending, then there's going to be a lot of extra disposable income, and then they will spend more. So some key words to know here are disposable income, autonomous consumption, and then also this word dis-savings. It's very, very rarely, but occasionally they'll ask about that as a multiple choice question. So what if incomes fall and people stop buying things? Who often steps in? So if spending goes down, we know that AD is going to go down, and we're going to be in a recessionary gap. What can we do to fix that? So the government steps in, and this section is how you need to, what you need to know to understand how the government can fix a problem. So the government has 2 different toolboxes it can use to stabilize the economy or get it going faster or slower to get it in the sweet spot of full employment. Those 2 tools are fiscal policy and monetary policy. Fiscal policy is actions by Congress to stabilize the economy, and monetary policy is actions by the Federal Reserve Bank. to stabilize the economy. This we will talk about in Unit 4. We're going to focus on fiscal policy right now. And more specifically, within the fiscal policy toolbox, there are two tools that Congress can use to stabilize the economy. One is changing government spending, and the other is changing taxes. Okay. Now, fiscal policy is one toolbox that the government can use to fix the economy. The two tools in that toolbox are changing government spending and changing taxes. But I need to pause here and talk about discretionary versus non-discretionary fiscal policy. These are not different types of fiscal policy, they're just different ways that Congress implements the change in spending or the change in taxes. So they can either implement it through discretionary fiscal policy, and all that means is that they pass a law right now that is designed to change AD in order to get us out of either an inflationary gap or a recessionary gap. So Congress passes a law that increases government spending so that we can increase AD and get us out of a recession, so we can speed up the economy. That means that law is just for that time right now. One problem with that is that sometimes there's a lot of time lag involved in bureaucracy in getting Congress to act, and then once it's passed, it takes time to get it going. So a lot of people think that that's not as good as non-discretionary fiscal policy, which is still a law that's been passed, but it's a permanent spending or tax law that automatically adjusts to the way the economy is, so that it'll increase spending or decrease taxes, or decrease spending or increase taxes depending on where the economy is at. So an example of discretionary fiscal policy is in a recession, Congress increases spending. This happened in 2012 when Obama took office and we were in a recession. You know, it might have been 2008, I don't remember, but when he took office, we were in a recession. He passed a lot of spending bills so that we could get out of that recession. And then down here, an example of non-discretionary fiscal policy is when something like a welfare bill that was passed way back when, in the 40s and the 50s, or the unemployment bills that were passed a long time ago, or even the progressive tax system that we use right now. Those things have been passed and they automatically work all the time. So if we're, let's say, in a recession, there's going to be more people on welfare. So the government is automatically spending more money by handing out those welfare checks, or more people on unemployment benefits. Or on the progressive tax system, how that works is the more money you make, the more taxes they take, the more percent. So if we are in a recession, people are making less money, so they're automatically collecting less taxes. So taxes go down automatically. Or if we're in an inflationary gap, people are making more money, so then they're automatically collecting more taxes. So these bills are passed for that one-time thing. They just happen right then. It takes a little while for them to go through. And then these non-discretionary bills, these are things that are permanently there that automatically fix the economy. All right. So again, fiscal policy is Congress either changing taxes or government spending to move AD to get us in and out of recessionary or inflationary gaps, to speed up the car, to slow down the car, so that we can be in that sweet spot of full employment. So there are two directions to go depending on where the economy is at. So what do we do to stabilize? Well, if we are in an inflationary gap, then Congress passes laws that will reduce inflation and decrease GDP. What do they do to reduce inflation and decrease GDP? They either decrease government spending, or they increase taxes, which decreases disposable income, which means people spend less, or they do a combination of the two. And then those things either change G or C on the AD shifters, and it will shift AD into the left. That's what they do if we're in an inflationary gap. We use contractionary fiscal policy. And then if we are in a recessionary gap, the economy is going too slow and we need to speed things up, they will pass laws that will reduce unemployment and increase GDP. So they can increase government spending, or they could decrease taxes, which would decrease which would increase disposable income and then cause people to spend more. And both those, either increasing C or increasing G, will move AD out to the right, and that will get us out of a recessionary gap. Or they could do a combination of the two. So there are two tools in the fiscal policy toolbox. They can either change spending or they could change taxes. There's two ways to use the tools: non-discretionary or discretionary. Spending, discretionary, is when they pass a bill right now, just for right now. Non-discretionary is an automatic stabilizer where they passed a long time ago. It's a permanent law and it works all the time, just automatically changing spending or taxes. Sorry. And then these are the two ways to use it depending on what the situation is. Is the car going too slow? Then we use expansionary fiscal policy to expand GDP and move us out of a recessionary gap. Or is the car going too fast? Then we use contractionary fiscal policy to slow the car down and get us out of an inflationary gap. And that is it on the introduction explanation for fiscal policy. Thank you.